I think that the idea of what I like to talk about in video games is changing a little bit. I think it's really kind of more settled in the middle where you can be excited about things regardless of what it's on, right? Like, and I'm not trying to downplay what's happening with Xbox because I think Xbox putting exclusives on PlayStation is foolish and ultimately renders the reasons to buy Xbox next to nothing. So this isn't about that. This is just more or less about, I'm trying to find the positives in gaming regardless. So yeah, I'm excited about a lot of the games that are coming to Xbox. I know that a lot of them will probably come to PlayStation. I'm not going to get rid of my Xbox. It's going to ride out this generation regardless. PlayStation, I love what they're doing with some things. I like their big time first party exclusives. The problem is they've been struggling. But this is something that I've been wanting, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been wanting for a long time. Even though it gets downplayed tremendously, I thought it was well worth talking about because this would actually be a megaton announcement, and we don't get those very often these days. So yeah, absolutely cannot wait to see if this ends up being true. But according to this, and keep this with a grain of salt, but I can link this in the description down below. Sony may be working on native PS3 backwards compatibility. Sony could be working on a solution to make PS3 games natively playable on PlayStation 5 consoles. Now, according to recent claims made by insiders, and we've heard this a couple times before actually, that they were actually kind of investing in this. Despite some of Sony's latest efforts to remedy the issue, the PS5's underwhelming backwards compatibility has been a consistent point of criticism for the otherwise impressive current-gen consoles, in a large part because most games from previous PlayStation generations, aside the PS4 era, aren't playable on a PS5. So, if this rumor is to be believed, though, Sony may finally be able to fix one of the biggest flaws that its current hardware has, and that is by supporting native PlayStation 3 games on the PS5. I personally think that this would be a huge benefit for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. First of all, I know people go, oh, well, who would this benefit? Would this benefit, consumers? So Sony probably won't do it. But listen, if you have PS3 games, they're obviously not going to start making PS3 games again, but you have a digital store where you can sell people those PS3 games. And there is a lot of PlayStation 3 games that are tied to that platform still. Right, I know people don't believe it, but there's a lot of them. There's the Resistance trilogy. There's some SOCOM games that were pretty good. There's a ton of Ratchet and Clank games. The list really goes on. Metal Gear Solid 4. There's little things like Little Big Planet Karting or Mod Nation Racers. There's just so many games that are locked to that platform, even like little hidden gems like Puppeteer. So I think it would really behoove them to go out and do that. Sony does sometimes add ports of the older PlayStation games to PlayStation Plus Premium, the Classics catalog. The PS5's backwards compatibility still leaves a lot to be desired. After all, the large majority of PS1, PS2, PS3, PSP, and Vita games are not playable on modern PlayStation platforms. In fact, the titles from those console generations that can be played on Sony's latest hardware often come with caveats. For one, the classic games are only available digitally, meaning the original physical copies aren't supported. Additionally, in the case of PS3 games, gamers need to persistently connect it to the internet to stream them through the cloud, which I have always stated that this was a piss poor way to play games, and it's just not a fun way to kind of kick back and relax and play your game. So while PlayStation owners might not be able to insert and run their PS2 discs on PS5s anytime soon, they may have soon the ability to play PS3 games on the modern console without having to stream them through the cloud. That's at least according to Incredible Insider, or at least someone who claims to be an insider, gets things right sometimes. But we'd heard this before from a few other people as well. They alleged that Sony is reportedly planning to make PS3 games natively playable on the PS5. The sources reportedly told them that Sony is working on select PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility. The word select in this contest seemingly indicates that Sony will individually handpick some PS3 titles to make playable on the PS5, similar to what Microsoft did with backwards compatibility games on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S when this was mentioned. Someone from this live stream brought up the idea of PS3 games potentially having their frame rates and resolutions boosted on PS5. However, when asked, they said that they simply wasn't sure about the specifics, saying that they didn't get any more details or if it'll have like a FPS boost or anything like that. All he heard was that Sony was working on select PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility. Now, there are many great PlayStation 3 exclusives that are sadly still trapped on the console, like Infamous, Metal Gear Solid 4, Killzone 2 and 3. I had mentioned earlier the Resistance trilogy and things like that. MotoStorm games, but being able to play these games natively on PlayStation 5 would be a dream come true, and really kind of, I think, help out tremendously. If you look back to when Microsoft did their big announcement, right, and they were like, oh, we're gonna bring back, we're gonna do backwards compatibility. I think one of the things that really was impressive to that point was they were kind of going into this era where they didn't have a lot to offer in terms of exclusive games and things like that. And they really needed some good things to kind of win people over. Now, regardless, some people will go, well, who really plays these games? Who's really playing these games? To be honest, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a win. Some people will go back and play for novelty. Personally, I still have a PlayStation 3 hooked up, so it's really one of those things where I think it behooves them to do it. Again, we're in a situation where people want to be able to take their games with them and play their games and things like that. And so it's really kind of sad that we're in such a predicament where it's such a taboo thing, right? It's like, there are some things about consoles that I absolutely love, right? The closed box, the ability to kind of, stop cheating and things like that. I love those aspects of console gaming. The main thing that I would say and kind of push back against a little bit is the fact that every generation you sort of, and this is where I kind of maybe do agree a little bit with like Phil Spencer and things, is you have to start completely over from scratch every generation. I always thought, hey, sometimes it would be good to be able to, take your games with you. And that's one of the things that I think, and I've mentioned this previously, I actually think Nintendo is going to do something for the first time, that is they're going to, really go all in with the backwards compatibility and stuff like that, which just honestly just makes a lot of sense, because you have, 140 plus million Switches out there, right? And what are you going to do? You really want to be able to take advantage of that, and you want to bring new people in as well, take advantage of the new hardware, but at the same time I feel like you need to be able to kind of give people a reason to buy it. So like the hardcore would possibly maybe buy the newer Switch, but you also keep going with the older Switch as well. I think it makes sense to do that. They have such great games, and I think a lot of their games don't really rely on the state-of-the-art graphics. They didn't get into that whole graphics war, that hell, we got to have the state-of-the-art graphics, we got to do this, we got to do that. They didn't really get into that, so I think that's really smart on their part to kind of go out and have something like that, to where they have this hardware where they make money on their hardware, they make money on their software, they make money on their services, right? There's no issues. You notice that Nintendo doesn't have the same issues that PlayStation and Xbox have, right? Like PlayStation is like the number one gaming company in the world, and they're still having issues where, okay, well, we got to put games on on PC, we've got to do this, we got to do that, and Nintendo doesn't have to do any of that stuff, and I think that's great. They have something unique about them, and I think that's really, really cool. Now, where it comes down to like this type of situation, I think that it really is cool to have as many of those games as possible backwards compatible. Like I have a lot of Xbox and Xbox 360 games that are backwards compatible on my Series X, and a good number of them installed. And I go back and play them often as well, because I'm just going to be honest with you, a lot of the games that we get this generation aren't thrilling to me. There's always some kind of thing where they don't focus on the fun factor. It's always on something else or some stupid agenda or some box that they had to tick, and like that's not what gaming is to me. Like gaming to me is just, hey, here's a game. Is it fun? Is it cool? That's right. You know, that's exactly what I think needs to happen. So hopefully they'll continue that at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I really hope so. So I want to see what they can do. Hopefully they can continue to push boundaries and things like that. But how do you guys feel? Would you guys love to see PS3 backwards compatibility on the PS5? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. I'm Crap Gamer. This has been Crap Gamer Reviews. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.